Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and we have today third-time guest Jillian Kendrick. She was episode number 2 talking about how to create an unforgettable customer experience, and then came back in 2020 for episode number 42 on her journey from an opera singer to becoming an entrepreneur. Now, Jillian is back for round 3 talking about how to help you narrow down your niche. Jillian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. This is always so much fun, and I feel privileged to be sharing a ton of value and hope somebody can get something great out of this. So thank you for having me.
I'm so excited because your topic of how to narrow down your niche really resonates with something I've been hearing from John Lee Dumas, the Entrepreneur on Fire guy, where he says, niche until it hurts. I think most recently, I'll say, I've heard it from JLD. And JLD, for folks who don't know, is the guy who did the daily podcast, the daily business inspiration. You hear someone's success story on your way to work, and he just got really specific. As he says, he was the best and the worst and the only daily business podcast when he first started. And he got really, really specific. And he's leveraged that into so much because he got so specific. So I'd love to hear from you, Jillian. Tell us about your experience in niching, what's worked, what has not worked, and how do you help people niche down?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a couple of components here. Number one is when you niche down, you have to be passionate about it, right? Like you have to have some kind of a connection to that niche or niche. Sorry if anybody's like nails on a chalkboard because of the pronunciation.
Let's just use both in alternating sentences,
Right.
And that'll annoy everybody.
We'll roll with it. But I think when you niche down, there has to be some level of connection or compassion or some kind of like visceral way that you are connected and you feel that person or that group of people. Because if it's not there, like if you're just going after lawyers because they have money or going after doctors because they have money, then that's great. And that's point number 2 is you have to go after a niche that's got some money if you actually want to make money at this. But without some kind of a connection, without actually feeling and understanding that person that you're trying to serve, I really feel you're doing yourself a disservice by not understanding and kind of living in that world of that group of people. But you're also going to do them a disservice because you're not in it for more than just the money. And in my opinion, you should be, or you have to be in order to really do it successfully. But then point number 2 is you have to go after somebody who has money. 6-7 years ago, I was engaged to my husband and I really loved wedding planning. I was doing some event planning for some clients of mine at the time. And I was like, oh, this is event planning as a process. Wedding planning is a process. We can automate a little bit of this. And I found so many brides-to-be who needed help and wanted help. And I started to create a program around helping brides create a beautiful and memorable wedding on a budget. And then realized, number 1, I was super passionate about it because it was what I was doing at the time, but there wasn't a longevity to being engaged. As soon as I was married and felt that sort of freedom of not having to plan a wedding anymore, I really genuinely lost interest in it. And I felt bad about that. And it became a real job to have to find content and build a following that was much different than when I was engaged. Maybe you feel a little bit of that yourself, Brian. And the reality was a lot of younger brides don't really have a whole lot of money to spend on a wedding coach. And that sort of thing didn't even really exist 6 or 7 years ago. So number 1, you have to be passionate about it. Number 2, the group of individuals you're going after have to have money if you want to make it successful.
How can I know in advance if I'm going to lose interest or lose passion for an area? When I think about how long it takes to establish yourself in a particular niche, it might be, I don't know, a year, 5 years, depending on what you're trying to establish yourself in and what the competition is like. And I've done some things where I was loving it and really into it for, I don't know, a decade. And then I lost interest. But it's hard to tell in advance. Do I actually love this thing if I'm doing it all the time? So how do you help people understand what their long passion is as opposed to just what they're enjoying right now?
Maybe your example isn't the perfect one because a decade's a long time. You could totally establish yourself within a decade and find a great niche to work in. And if you find that maybe you're not so interested in that thing, right? Or maybe you're into sports, but after so many years you have an injury and you're not really into those sports anymore. life happens, those sorts of things happen. But I think if you can find a niche or an industry or a group of individuals where that particular thing, no matter what it is, whether it's sports or gardening or parenting or owning a business or underwater basket weaving, right? Like whatever it is, if it's something that someone needs help with, that they're willing to pay for that help, and it's help that they can use for the long term, then I think you found something. Whereas for me, the bride example, in a perfect world, if everyone gets married once, and sometimes that's not the case for some of us, but in a perfect world, if somebody only gets married once, then they're only going to be a bride or a groom once, and it's a very narrow window of time. Whereas business ownership, even if you own a business for 5 years or for a decade or 20 or 30 years and then go off and do something else, well, that's still a significantly longer period of time than being engaged.
How do you look at the relationship between niching down and competition? I think about the JLD example again, and I could say, I'm going to go be a daily podcast that inspires entrepreneurs with success stories. And it doesn't matter how passionate I am, someone already did that and he already won big and he's a household name. So I can't niche down enough if I'm just doing what JLD did. How do you help people understand? Let's use that particular example. Let's say that's what I really want to do is just what JLD did. How do you advise your clients in a different path that's similar enough to capture that passion, but not just copying somebody else?
Really good question. Let me ask you this. Are you John Lee Dumas?
I am not. He has way more hair. And he lives somewhere very sunny. And I'm looking outside right now, and I am definitely not JLD.
Fair enough. Do you speak like him?
No, I don't.
Do you think like him?
I don't think so either. I'd like to think some of the time. I'm a member of his Podcaster's Paradise because I like to think like him. But no, I don't think like JLD.
Fair enough. And I'm sure I could find a couple more questions where you might answer yes or no to, but the fact of the matter is, even if somebody is out there who has done what you do, number one, what could possibly be the reason that you couldn't do that? And I'm saying that to myself as equally as I'm saying it to the person listening here. But also, you're going to put your own spin on it. You could interview 90 something people on a podcast about running a business. You're always interviewing a person, you're always speaking on a relatively similar topic, but each one of those are going to be different because I have my own take on something, right? You have your own take on something. We each come to every moment in our lives with different experience, with different baggage, with different levels of understanding and appreciation and empathy. And I think that your take on doing the exact same thing that anybody else is doing is truly what makes you unique, is literally you, yourself. It's your take, your experience, your baggage, your empathy, your feelings, what you've got to share with the world. And so there are millions of career coaches. There are millions of coaches, authors, and speakers. There are millions of entrepreneurs. There are tons of people who do the exact same thing, but everybody's a little bit different.
It's so interesting to think about. Yes, even if I tried to copy JLD, I couldn't because he's him and I'm me. I'm bringing, say, a decade of sword fighting experience to what I talk about. I don't talk about sword fighting that much, I don't think, but that influences me. And JLD has some other thing, like JLD was in the military, so he brings his own experience there.
I've never heard you talk about sword fighting. I would love to know more.
Really?
Yeah.
That was about a decade of my life. Did sword fighting all over the country. Metal armor, wooden weapons, full contact. Here's a great example, folks. I perceive myself to talk about sword fighting, but I try to not talk about it so much as to be annoying. Because I'm pretty sure in my early 20s, sorry, everyone I knew then at all, I'm pretty sure I talked about it too much, right? Like you have that friend who's really into that sport or that hobby or that lifestyle, like this is the most important thing in the world. Want to hear more? Like, actually, no, I'm good after the first hour. I'm pretty sure I was that guy. So I'm trying to balance it out in my 30s, right? And apparently I've never told Jillian that a lot of people knew me as Barv Gachap Keith, which means Redbeard, son of Keith. I've never told you that story. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure this relates to that. You need to repeat your marketing message until you grow sick of it and are about to vomit. Because only at that moment have your prospects begun to remember it. And if you stop before you start to get really, really sick of it, then no one's going to remember because you think you're talking about it all the time.
Yep.
But they aren't. Well, folks, if you've not heard me talk about sword fighting enough, I can fix this, because when you go get my book, The Impact Framework, at redbeardimpact.com, part of the nurture emails after that are telling stories about the nature of impact, which hilariously in this context could mean getting hit in the head, but that's not what I mean by impact. But I have stories in there, sword fighting stories. So yeah, redbeardimpact.com. That's fascinating. Clearly I need to embrace that more in my marketing. But back to you, Jillian. I want to hear about how people who are loving how you're talking about niching, what steps can they take to get on your calendar to talk with you more about niching down if they're not sure that they're really niched down enough?
I have a narrow down my niche interview process where it's $97 for a half hour with me. And I basically take you through my interview questions and we work through, who do you like to work with? Who do you not like to work with? Who do you like to serve? I'm going to add now, based on this conversation, I'm going to add.
Are you a sword fighter?
Yeah. Are you a sword fighter? Do you have any high school fun, quirky hobbies or anything that we should know about? Yeah, we're totally going to add that now.
I probably also, Jillian, have not told you that I once performed in the Rose Bowl.
No, I didn't know this either.
I was a trombonist in the Cougar Marching Band at WSU and got to play at the Rose Parade and then play halftime at the Rose Bowl.
Of course you did. That's amazing.
What I've also not told you is that I was in the first group to perform in Seahawks Stadium in Seattle back when it was first built, and before the Seahawks ever played in it, it was WSU versus Arizona. And so I got to go run into a stadium of 70,000-ish seats and perform there. Isn't it funny, folks, the stories that we don't really think to talk about? So, whatever, everyone plays for 70,000 people in marching band, duh. And then, no, actually, it's ridiculous and bizarre and amazing, and people want to hear more. So if you want to get down to the guts of your story, then you should go get on Jillian's calendar. What's the place they go to get on your calendar for that narrow down your niche thing, Jillian?
informedmarketingsolutions.com/niche, NICHE.
Wonderful. informedmarketingsolutions.com/niche. Now, there's one other thing that you are just starting up, and let's wrap up this interview with hearing just a teaser about your newest project.
I became a mama. My intro to parenting was in the middle of a pandemic.
Good planning.
Right, I know, right? Thank you very much. Our son was born at the beginning of March in 2020, and I was on maternity leave. Everything shut down. It's now middle of 2021, and my husband has been working from home the entire time. I've been on sort of a semi-maternity leave, semi still kind of working and checking things in sort of status, and it's been a wild ride. I have seen just an unforgettable amount of similarities and parallels with the way that my son learns and the way that he behaves and the way that he reacts to things and the way that my coaching clients or that our implementation clients react or grow and learn. It really inspired me to help mama entrepreneurs who are going through the exact same thing, because the reality of my working day is my son would take at least one, sometimes two naps a day, and that changes by age, but usually I can count on at least one solid nap a day, and I would work for a tiny bit while he was napping, and then we would put him to bed around 6:30 so that I could start working, and I would work from 6 or 7 until about midnight or so, and then I would wake up with the baby at 6 or 6:30 a.m. and do it all over again. It's hard. It's a lot. It's a big commitment to be a mama. It's a big commitment to run a business, and it is a massive commitment to do both at the same time, especially when your intro to parenting is in the middle of a pandemic. So that was super fun. In the process of growing my business and being an entrepreneur and being a mama and really wanting to have both and knowing that I can have both as long as I figure out the right systems, hire the right people, build the right team, do all of the right things. And a lot of those things I did while I was pregnant in preparation of our son arriving. A lot of those things I had to do working in the middle of the night while he was asleep. And some of those things I'm still working on, but I was really inspired to help mama entrepreneurs grow their business so that they can have both the baby and the business without sacrificing one for the other. So I created The Mess. the Mama Entrepreneur Success Society, where I have a coaching program, private Facebook group, and it's meant to help mama entrepreneurs walk through how to balance the baby and the business. A lot of the mistakes that I already made, I will share. I will teach you how to automate so that you can make the most out of every free minute that you have. I'll teach you how to automate so that you can be present in your business without actually having to physically be sitting at a desk, and how you can make six figures or more by working a couple hours a week, like I was able to.
Talk about a niche.
Yeah.
Jillian, where can people go to learn more about the Mama Entrepreneur Success Society?
If you go to automatewithus/mama, MAMA, you can check out some more information. If you just go on Facebook and look for the Mama Entrepreneur Success Society, you'll find our private Facebook group.
Wonderful. Jillian, thanks for being on the show for round 3. Where can people best connect with you on social media?
Get me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook all the time, whether you find my group or just send me a friend request. Let's definitely connect.
Wonderful. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.